Wow, a brand new Wii Sports game. We haven't got one of those since whatever this was. Man, I'm so excited to finally have a new Wii Sports. What is that? Mii's. These little guys were created for the Wii as a way to have a universal character creator, which many games on the platform would support, and many games were exclusively played with them as well. They became so integrated with the Nintendo brand that they would appear on every console following the Wii, but it seems that recently, with the reveal of the new Switch sports game, and the fact that the Mii Maker is now hidden inside the settings menu, Nintendo no longer understands how important the Miis are, so I think now is a better time than ever to look back through some of the games that focused on them, and go back to a time when Nintendo was not committing the crimes against humanity these little gremlins are. Ah yes, Wii Sports. This was a launch title with the Wii, and came free with most consoles. This game is a compilation of 5 sports, which all use the Wii Remote in a different way to try and emulate the feeling of actually playing the sport. The most popular of the games that come with this collection has to be bowling, and this is very understandable, as it is my favorite game in this collection. It is exactly what you would expect. All you have to do is aim where you want the ball to go, and then throw it. There really isn't much to it, but it is strangely addicting, and that feeling of getting a strike is the best you can get in this entire collection. Tennis is definitely the simplest game in the collection. All it requires you to do is just swing the Wii Remote whenever the ball is close to one of your players. It's simple, and definitely not the most fun to play by yourself, but if you have a friend to play with, this can still be a good time. In contrast to tennis, golf is probably the most complex game in the collection. You have to choose from different types of clubs depending on how far you need to send the ball, but the game helps with this by automatically giving you a certain club depending on your position or distance, helping out players that don't know golf very well. But my guess is you can do a lot better if you actually know what each club does and make better decisions on which one to use based on that knowledge. To actually swing and hit the ball, you swing the remote like you would a golf club, and you have to swing it at just the right speed to hit the ball exactly how you want it. This can be pretty frustrating, as if you swing too slow, the Wiimote doesn't even pick it up, but if you do it too fast, the ball goes flying, and the little bar at the side goes red, and it makes a really annoying noise, and then you finally make it to the hole, but you barely miss it 30 times, and then I start crying because golf is scary. But other than that, it's pretty fun. Next up is baseball, which is pretty simple. The only 2 things you can do is bat and pitch, and all of the complicated stuff like catching the ball or running is done for you. Man, I love baseball. So this obviously shouldn't be too hard. Alright, that wasn't great, but I'm sure the CPU can't do much better. Can we do boxing now? Boxing is another really fun one. This game requires the Wiimote and nunchuck, so it can use both of your hands like a real boxing match. You can move the Wiimote and nunchuck in certain positions to dodge, block, and perform attacks. Depending on where you punch from, you can hit different spots and try to go for ones that your opponent is not blocking. It also feels very good to land a hit. Alongside all of these games is the training mode, which allows you to play different score-based minigames to try and improve your skill in each of the sports. This is a really fun way to play if you can't play with someone else at the moment, and it helps you get better at many of the games as well. My personal favorite out of all of these is the power throws in the bowling section. It slowly gives you more and more pins to knock down, and you have to try and knock down as many as you can. Getting a strike in this mode feels even better than in the main mode. Overall, while this game is not perfect, it is still super fun, especially if you have friends to play with. It also really helps show off what the Wii could do, and for an early Wii game, the motion controls are very good, which is something that can't be said about many games that came out near the Wii's launch. While Wii Sports is a great game, especially for a pack-in game meant to help people get used to the motion controls, it definitely left something to be desired. Only having 5 sports really limited the game from being anything more than just a game you pulled out every once in a while when people were over. A lot of motion controls just could be a little rough at times, which was especially apparent in golf, but I think most of this was just due to the fact that this game was more of a tech demo for the Wii than anything. and I think Nintendo knew this, as a few years later, Wii Sports was given a sequel that was better in every way. In the summer of 2009, Nintendo made an accessory for the Wii Remote called Wii Motion Plus. While most Wii accessories really didn't do anything and were just plastic shells to stick your controller in. But Wii Motion Plus was made to actually improve gameplay by giving better motion controls. But Nintendo needed to find a way to get people to actually buy it and show that it was worth having. So alongside Wii Motion Plus, Wii Sports Resort was released with Wii Motion Plus packaged with it. The game starts off with your Mii inside of an airplane and throws you into a skydiving minigame and gives you a view of Woohoo Island, the place where the game takes place. And that's one of my favorite parts of this game. Every single minigame you play takes place on a certain spot of the island, actually making the resort feel like a real place. Like there's an entire island away from the main one that is entirely dedicated to golf, and that is where the golf games take place. Woohoo Island was so special that it even got featured in Mario Kart. Twice. That's just really cool. Whenever you play a minigame and look around the background, you can tell which spot you are at in the island, and none of this was needed at all, but they did it anyway, which to me just shows that they actually cared about the quality of the game and didn't just want to make it to sell Wii Motion Plus add-ons. Speaking of the add-on, that is another thing that actually makes the game better. At first glance, it seems dumb that you would need the add-on to play the game, but trust me when I say it genuinely made the game better for me. Take for example golf. In the original it felt very clunky and you could never hit the ball like you wanted to, but with Wii Motion Plus everything is much smoother and moves like you would expect it to. The game also comes with a ton more games than the original did, and many of them have multiple modes that you unlock, meaning that you can get a lot out of one game mode. For example, when you start the game, the only sword game you have unlocked is Duel. But after you play, you unlock Speed Slice, where you have to slice an object in a certain way before your opponent does. And then finally, you unlock Sword Showdown, where you have to go on an E for everyone version of a killing spree, and this is the most fun you can ever have. That's another thing about this game that I really enjoy. While the main focus is on multiplayer, there are still a good handful of single-player focused modes, like Showdown, meaning that the game still has value even if you don't have anyone to play with at the moment. A really fun mode is Island Flyover, where you just get to relax and fly around the island. It's really cool to fly over all of the places where you were playing the other games at. I found a tennis court you can fly over, and since there isn't a tennis mode in the game, the explanation is that the dogs on the island stole all of the tennis balls, and I just think that's funny. This game is such a fun minigame collection, and just has so many fun details that were not needed at all, but were added anyway just to make the game that much better. So if you haven't had a chance to check this game out yet, I really recommend it. It is probably my second favorite game in this video. So that's both Wii Sports games covered, and they were super fun collections and are great for multiplayer, and there is even some fun to be had in single player. But with Nintendo's jump to HD with the Wii U, most people were wondering if the Wii Sports series would be continued, and it was, sort of. They released Wii Sports Club, an extremely bland remake of the original. Now, to be fair, I do not own this game, and I never will. But from what I do know about it, you have a few ways to buy the game. You can buy the games individually, which I have no idea why someone would look on the eShop and go, yeah, I just want Wii Tennis. Or, you could buy a pass that would let you play one of the games for a limited amount of time. Once again, who would do that? Oh yes, I would like 1 hour of baseball, please. And when the game came out in November of 2013, it didn't even have all the games yet. It only had bowling and tennis. Golf was released a month later, and it wasn't until July of 2014 that they released the rest of them. What took them so long? From the looks of it, this game was just an HD upgrade of the original. It could not have been that hard to port Wii Baseball. But once all of the games were out, there was a physical version you could get with all of the games included. But this also begs the question on why they didn't just remake Resort instead. The game has so much more going on than the original, and they could have just added the original games from the original Wii Sports that weren't in Resort, and maybe add a few new ones and make this the definitive Wii Sports game. But instead, they just decided to give us a direct downgrade from the entry we got before it. But you're probably wondering why I'm ranting so much about a game I don't even own. And that's because I own a much better game that was released a whole year before Wii Sports Club, that game being Nintendo Land. This game came packaged with the Wii U and offers so much more than Wii Sports Club did. First off, the game looks much better and has its own style that makes the whole game look like some kind of toy playset, which fits the whole gimmick of this game being a bunch of minigames based off of Nintendo franchises. These minigames get a lot more interesting due to the Nintendo theme as well. It allows the game to do a lot more than just sport and still be fun. A lot of the minigames use the gamepad in different ways that you wouldn't have really thought of before, like holding it sideways and using the stylus to throw shurikens at ninjas, or using it to steer your vehicle in the F-Zero minigame, which is sadly the most recent thing to come out of that franchise. The game also still uses the Wiimote, whether that be for multiplayer or just a different way to play the same game, like giving you a sword instead of a bow in the Zelda game. I will say that some controls in the game can get a little annoying. It felt like a lot of stuff was added just to show what the gamepad could do, not that it should do it. So some minigames feel forced and try to show off some cool gimmicks the gamepad had. I think one of the biggest examples of a game that felt kinda shoved in was Yoshi's Fruit Cart. I guess they thought that there wasn't enough touch control usage in the game, so they just decided to throw in a line drawing simulator. This minigame just feels so lazy and cheap compared to the others, and it got boring really fast. The game's hub is also very fun, and you can unlock things to put in it by getting coins from playing games and using them to play this Plinko game. It would be a lot for this video to try and cover every single minigame in this, so I'll just talk about 3 of my favorites. The first one being Pikmin Adventure. This game is basically just a simplified version of the usual Pikmin formula, but there are a surprising amount of levels to play through. I remember really liking this one when I was younger because it gave me something to do when I played this game by myself, which was mostly how I played the game. You would think that since I like this minigame so much that I would have tried a real Pikmin game, but I still haven't done that. Another great game in the collection is Balloon Trip. This was another fun single-player game. This one is controlled by the touchscreen, which blows wind in whatever direction you slide it. You have to try and dodge obstacles that will pop your balloons, and try to go as far as you possibly can with the amount of lives you are given. It's a fun little distraction, and it always feels good to try and get a better score. Finally, we have Metroid Blast, which is another level-based game, where you can either play with the gamepad and Samus's ship, or use the Wiimote to play the game with the blaster on the ground. It's all wave-based, and it's super fun to blast a bunch of enemies with your blaster. Nintendo Land is super fun, and for a game like this, it has a lot of single-player content. While I wouldn't say it is a must-play, it is a super fun party game that offers quite a lot, and is really fun to pull out with friends. All of the games so far have just been minigame collections, some really good ones at that, but there are only so many times I could pretend to hit a ball with a TV remote. And I think Nintendo is realizing this as well, so in 2013 Nintendo decided to make something different. That something being Tomodachi Life. This game is technically a sequel, as in 2009 Tomodachi Collection was released on the DS, but it was a Japan exclusive, meaning that Tomodachi Life was most people's first experience of the series, including me. This game is pretty hard to describe. The closest thing I can compare it to is The Sims, and that most of the game you're just watching your Miis do different things and interact with your other Miis. The game starts off with a view of a peaceful island, and your first task is to name this island. So, of course, I named it Borg. After this, it asks you to populate the island by putting a Mii version of yourself. After you do this, the Mii immediately feels lonely, and the game asks you to give it a friend. A friend? Come on, brodgi. Think! Yeah, that'll work, I guess. The game then shows me what my life could have been like if I didn't spend all my time ranting about Wii Sports. Thanks, Nintendo. After that, you're just kind of set free to do whatever you want and add more buildings to the island. You mainly do this by adding more islanders and meeting certain conditions. So of course, the first thing I did was add some more islanders. Some you may recognize from past episodes of Brodgi. I even added him. But then I realized I would need some more islanders to unlock more parts of the game, and I didn't really feel like being creative, so I started the brodgi cloning initiative, because the only thing better than one of me is like 14. And some of them ended up turning out better than others. For most of the game, you just sort of sit around and wait for your islanders to need something, and they can ask for a lot of things like food, a new room, new clothes. Sometimes they want you to help them make new friends, or even just play a mini game. There are points in the game where there feels like there's nothing to do at all, but also since I'm kind of rushing through it to get this video out, I am probably not playing it how it was intended. This game is one of those games where you just check in on it every once in a while and do some tasks for your islanders, check a few events happening, and get back off. While that isn't necessarily what I would like in a game, I can definitely see why someone would like that. Speaking of events, that's another thing that happens throughout the day in this game. Depending on what time you get on, different events will happen, and they are fun little distractions and can sometimes get you money or other cool stuff. Also, this happened. Another big factor of this game is the friendship system, where your islanders will form bonds with each other and can even date, get married, and have children. This is another aspect of the game that can take a while to happen, and I just don't really have the patience to sit and wait for it. I think my main problem is that in other games of this style like Animal Crossing, there's a lot more to do while you wait for things to unlock, like talking to villagers, fishing, and doing other tasks to try and make money. But in Tomodachi Life, if your islanders don't want anything, there's nothing to do. And even if they have something for you to do, the tasks don't change that much, you're just doing the same things over and over again, and the fun interactions begin to lose their luster as a lot of them just repeat or feel similar to others. This game just really isn't the type of game I see myself playing for a super long time, but I definitely see the appeal and still had a lot of fun with the weird events and interactions that happened throughout my playthrough. And if it does look fun to you, then you'll probably have a good time with it. As you can see, we've had a pretty good selection of games so far, but I think this next game takes the cake as my personal favorite. While I think the last two games I've played have definitely been fun, I wouldn't be lying if I said that I have definitely been wanting something that feels more like a traditional game. You know, not the ones where you spend all your time recalibrating motion controls or staring at people, but I want one where you actually have a goal that you can progress towards, a quest even, and that, my friends, is where Miitopia comes in. This game seeks to mix the battling systems and the grand adventure feel of your traditional RPG with the life sim elements and the unpredictability of a game like Tomodachi Life, and I think we got a very interesting game as a result. The game takes place on the peaceful land of Miitopia, where the residents spend all of their time doing boring and predictable activities, when all of a sudden, disaster strikes, and an evil being called the Dark Lord steals all of their faces and attaches them onto monsters. The game then cuts to a lone adventurer, that's me, who encounters a butterfly with a face on it and runs into a nearby town. When I tell the townspeople, they don't believe me, until the Dark Lord Gonk steals all of their faces, leaving me to save them. After leaving the village, you're allowed to pick a job, which is this game version of a class. And I think I'm going to go with the mage class. You can't really go wrong with that, and I misclicked. Thief it is. Now I can stab those fiends to death. The battle system in this game is fairly simple, but pretty different from most RPGs. There are standard and magic attacks, with the magic attacks doing more damage, but they use up your MP. There aren't that many items to use during battle. There are only HP bananas and MP candies, with the bananas healing HP and the candies are storing MP. So far, the game's battle system is very simple, but what makes the system stand out is the fact that the only character you are in control of during battle is yourself. The rest of the team makes their own decisions. A lot of actions the team members will take is based on their personality, which can both buff their attacks or cause problems. Miis can also form relationships with each other, which allow for them to do attacks together which can boost damage and help each other out when they are in trouble. But with relationships and personalities comes arguments. Miis can get into arguments, which can affect how battles play out. Being angry can cause them to make worse decisions, which can affect themselves and other teammates. So after saving all of the faces in town, we are given the ability to go forward to the castle to pursue the Dark Lord. On the way there, I encountered a horse that I could customize, so I needed to make a horse that was brave, cunning, and most important, fast. And I have the perfect idea. Look, it's Hanuk. So after this, I go into the castle and meet the famous Goblin King, who at first scoffs at the idea of an evil gonk droid stealing people's faces, which surprises me as goblins are usually very knowledgeable on current topics. After this, his face is stolen, and I have to go get it back. A large part of the game is spent traveling from place to place. The game has a large world map that you travel from place to place from. You can find towns and other places with NPCs inside of them, and usually are there for story progression. But most of the map is filled with trails that you have to travel through to unlock more areas. You spend most of the game on these trails, and they are where you get into battles, and you occasionally find chests or items and other secrets hidden throughout these trails. Once you get to the end of a trail, you stop at an inn. This part of the game takes a lot of influence from Tomodachi Life, as your Miis will do different things they want, like talk to other party members, eat food, or buy new clothes, weapons, or healing items. But unlike in Tomodachi Life, it feels like I am actually doing these tasks for a reason. Buying new clothes increases the party members' stats instead of just being vanity. Eating food can also help increase stats, and is pretty important when trying to power up your team. Also, when Miis want to interact with each other, it can help increase their friendship, which actually helps you out in battle. The game's story goes on for a lot longer, and I recommend that you play through it yourself. There is easily around 30 hours of content here, which is very impressive, especially compared to the other games in this video. And since this game is now easily available on Switch, I would definitely recommend it if it looks interesting to you. So you see, Nintendo, Miis could still be a very important part of your brand. They have been a part of many great games and give tons of people great memories to look back on, and not including them in the new Wii Sports game is nothing but a mistake. What was that? They are in the game? Oh. Well, keep up the good work, I guess.